Now, the modeling and this sort of visualization was very interesting, but it was recognized from the outset that the issue might not be the software or the modeling tools, but really the lack of data. And I'm not going to go into data because I know it'll be covered, but we were of the view that we need to find more imaginative and more powerful ways to harness the potential of data. And we need to develop technologies for gathering and managing data and then transmitting it. And there were some very interesting discussions about how SMS technology has been used in developing countries to do this. So opening the data treasure chest, which will be the focus of topic 6.4, was something that was very much on the agenda for our session. Excuse me. There was also a sense that there was a need for more openness and transparency. More open source software should be encouraged. We had some excellent examples from UNESCO IHE where they were trying to capacity build their own participants with sophisticated but very open source software that can be edited by the partners themselves so that they could take this technology back home and play with it and adapt it to their local environmental and their local conditions. So there was a sense that this technology would be very powerful to help them leapfrog. The use of technology to strengthen the water industry was also discussed, and we had an interesting presentation from Avco, who showed how IT platforms can be used to target resources and donor funds more directly to the people that most need it, without there being a top slice being taken by different government bodies. They had developed a system where one could look at individual projects and actually send funds directly, and that this would lead to much more wider global participation in funding these types of initiatives, and it would create much more transparency, because there was a sense that a lot of people were not funding projects because they felt that various organizations were top slicing. They were linking journalists who had access to mobile phones and cameras who could document the progress of these projects, and these would then be presented on the websites, and they could see how these things were moving forward. In relation to the second theme, which was looking at how we create this imperative for change, really they felt that the way we need to create this imperative for change is by working much more with stakeholders and try and make the research respond to the needs of the stakeholders in cities. So really try and create a demand-driven process. And we had, again, very good reports from many projects, particularly the Switch project, where we had very strong stakeholder participation that was really, if you like, defining the research needs for a particular city. But there were some certain questions and concerns. One was the facilitation of these stakeholder platforms. Okay? Does it really depend on a very charismatic and charming individual to do this, or is it something that others can take over? You know, is it purely dependent on leadership? Also, the sustainability of these stakeholder platforms were questioned. How would they continue beyond the projects that set up these platforms? Who will be responsible for championing these processes after the projects? Who would be the honest broker that would facilitate the stakeholder activity within the city? So these were some concerns. And finally, we looked at the different players responsible for managing water. And there was a sense that we need to try and harmonise the approaches to water management. We needed to bring on all different players so that water could be at the centre of any plan that was taking place. There was concern expressed that the urban form is very much driven by cultural goals, transportation, economics, etc., and that water was always reactive to that urban form. And there was a sense that water should be more central to how the urban form is actually designed and planned, and that we should have a much more, if you like, democratic process in how we decide the urban form. And that would enable us to actually look at a much more broader continuum of options. So if we're talking about decentralized systems or centralized systems, we would have the option because we were actually informing the urban form. So I'll just leave a few pointers on the slide here, which summarize what we ended up with. First, we need to break the mold. We need to have a completely different perspective on how we do things, both in terms of the technological options, the organizational frameworks, and conceptually how we view water within a city. We also need to deconstruct preconceptions, and we need to understand that different technologies which come from different industries might really help us manage our water effectively. And in terms of the youth, I was very pleased we had a presentation from the Youth Forum. We had many participants from the Youth Forum at our sessions, and really they are the agents of change. And I think it's very important that the forum should embrace them much more proactively in future water forums. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Once Niels Bohr has said that forecasting is very difficult, particularly if it concerns the future. But if you look at what happened over the past 30 years, I think it will not be difficult to make an assessment how technology will change in the coming 30 years. Look at 30 years ago when the first personal computers appeared. Look at 15 years ago or 20 years ago when the internet started, how it has revolutionized our life. Look at Google or look at Facebook. Look at how networks networks have been developed. There's no doubt about it that technology over the past 20 years have changed our life. Everything around us in 5 meters, including this machine, my watch. This is all the results of the past 20 years. So if you make a symmetrical forecast, there's a tremendous thing which is ahead of us. One thing, however, I think what we need to discuss here, this was all hardcore science, but water at the end of the day is a social issue. How social sciences can bring about it require changes, participation, further networking, and all the rest. It will be a very interesting topic to discuss. Look at what happened over the past 20 years. My generation was still having major problems to solve very simple differential equations, which describes, gradually varying density flow. Now, if somebody, this is 101 in undergraduate studies, and if somebody doesn't know how to do that, that's tough luck.